Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Comics Cube. Today, Paul, will be talking with Duy and Lamar about Superman the movie, the 1979 Richard Donner movie of Superman, starring Christopher Reeve and Margot Kidder.
And top billed, Marlon Brando.
And Marlon Brando. Yes. And I'm going to start by asking everyone, when did you first see this film and did it make an impression on you? And perhaps we can start with Duy.
I have no idea. And the reason I have no idea is because I have an older brother. And my mom or my uncle, it was a family business. We had like a video shop when I was younger. So like movies were always just kind of in and out and in and out. So, and my big brother, did I say I have a little brother? I have a big brother. So I have a big brother and he would be playing that movie every now and then. So he would be playing it even when I wasn't watching. So when I first saw it was probably through osmosis. I do have a funny story though, because one time he sat me down in front of the TV and said, I'm going to make you watch Superman 5. Because at that point, we'd seen the whole thing, 1, 2, 3, and 4, right down to the nuclear man and his black fingernails. So he said, I'm going to make you watch Superman 5. And then he puts me in front of the TV and he plays Somewhere in Time, this movie where Christopher Reeve goes back in time in this romantic drama. And I sit in front of the TV for 2 hours waiting for him to suit up.
And he doesn't.
And he doesn't. And he doesn't. And every time his kids ask me about the worst trick he ever played on me, that's the one that I mention.
Could have been worse.
But did it make an impression on me? I mean, yeah. I mean, he was Christopher Reeve as Superman. He might have been the first time that I saw a real person acting as a superhero without it being funny. Because I might have seen Adam West Batman around the same time. There might have been a few others that were on TV. I don't really know. Like maybe I saw Jackson Bostwick as Captain Marvel. Anyway, so and at the time I think there were also some short reruns of George Reeves as Superman. Which, no offense to George Reeves, but if you're a kid and you see George Reeves and you see Christopher Reeve both playing Superman, one of those guys is going to scream Superman, and it's not George Reeves. So yeah, that's my first impression. So I'm sorry, I don't really have a concrete answer because I was too young. It's probably
You've just got a horrible instance of being deceived.
That was a good one, though. I got to give it to your brother. That was a good one.
You know, having seen it like many years later, I will say Somewhere in Time, for what it is not a bad movie. But still.
I've never seen it, so I'd like to. But,
it's not terrible if you have like absolutely nothing better to do with your time and you want to be depressed. But if you want to be depressed at the end of the day. So spoiler, it's not a happy ending. I'm sorry if I spoiled a 30-year-old movie, people.
That's kind of what we do around here, so, you know.
So, Lamar, when did you first see Superman? Not Somewhere in Time, but Superman. And did it make an impression on you?
Man, anybody that like knows me or grew up with me, especially in my formative years before I went to school, if you ask them that question, they would be like, this child was running around here with a towel on his neck. Like, I mean, when I was a little boy, you know how like we had the, anybody who was from that era, like in the 80s, you remember like the Underoos, right? So I can remember there was like a off-brand version of Underoos that didn't have the characters on it, but it had the color schemes. So like, but it was just solid colored underwear. But like for the Hulk or whatever, like they were green and they had like a yellow waistband, And so they had the Superman ones that had they were red with the blue trim and they had the yellow waist. So I had a pair of those. I didn't bother with wearing things under them. I just put that on, my Superman shirt, and I had a red towel. And listen, and I mean, I might have been like maybe, I might have been like maybe 3 years old when I was doing this, right? And I literally, this is what I would do. Like, I would put that stuff on and I would run down the street because where I grew up at, we have our own land. So the road goes up to like the main highway. So there was only so far I could go, but I would suit up and I did what I had to do and I was out and I would just run up and down the road where we lived at with those underwear, the Superman shirt and the towel. And my elders and stuff, every time I go back home and they see me, they be like, Lamar, you remember when you used to do that stuff with the towel and the underwear and stuff like that after y'all went and watched the Superman movie? I was like, of course. Like, it's a part of my personality even today, right? So, and I had seen versions of Superman before that, like the aforementioned George Reeves. And then on Sundays, because we didn't have cable in that where I grew up at that time. So a lot of those old serials would play like on Saturday and Sunday. So like all of the Captain Marvel stuff and the Kirk Alien Superman and all of that, I had already seen all that stuff, but it wasn't until I saw the Christopher Reeve film that I felt like it captured my imagination. And there's a part of that that's still with me, and I don't anticipate it going anywhere ever. So, yeah, it definitely left an impression upon me. Definitely. In a major way.
That's lovely. Personally, I didn't have that much of an impression made on me by it, surprisingly. Because when I was really, really young, I loved Superman. When I was like a toddler, I had Superman wallpaper and I would pretend to be He-Man, Popeye, and Superman. But, and I got a little bit older, I was a very, very sensitive child. One of these annoying children that everything makes them cry. So on one instance, on a wet afternoon, they played us, do you know that film, The Shaggy DA? With Dean Jones, that Disney film where he turns into a dog. Anyway, they played us. It's a very old film, but they played us that, and it made me cry. And I had to be taken out of the room because I was sobbing so much because the idea of a man turning into a dog terrified me so much. So I was like one of these really annoying children. And I saw Superman 3 around that age. And I'm sure you know where this is going. The lady at the end who gets turned into a robot just absolutely terrified me and put me off Superman for quite a few years.
I first read the comic adaptation of Superman 3 before I saw Superman 3, and I thought the Superman versus Clark fight would be absolutely awesome to see. And I read that part like over and over again. And then when I finally saw the movie, like I can't remember a thing about the movie. I remember Superman 4 better than Superman 3. And that's because the nuclear man is hilarious.
Yeah. For that woman, Robert Vaughn's sister, turning into a robot just scarred me and turned me away from Superman for years. So that made an impression on me. And I became more interested in Batman. And then Batman, the 89 Tim Burton film, made a huge impression on me. But I think as I got older then, I found myself going back to Superman. Because, yeah, I know. It's weird, isn't it?
Wait. Woman turning into a robot scares you, but nothing in Batman 1989.
It's weird, isn't it? Yeah,
Okay.
it's very peculiar. But I was a little bit older by the time I watched Batman, to be fair.
Okay.
Maybe I watched Superman 3 when I was too young. But yeah, it doesn't make any sense. But as I got older, then I found myself in my teenage years, and particularly when I went to university, then I sort of came back to Superman and came back to that place I'd been in when I was a toddler, and that's something I think is true of Superman. It's like the very, very young and the older people. That's who Superman kind of appeals for, and that's why I think this film particularly appeals to as well. Um, and so, yeah, it didn't have an impression on me, is what I'm saying, but I love it now. So my next question.
There's that Grant Morrison quote about how Superman does like appeal if you're to you if you're really young, and Batman appeals to you if you're more of an adolescent, a teenager, because he's got all of the cool stuff. And then
Absolutely, yeah.
and then how does the rest of it go? Superman will appeal to you again when you're older, because when you're older, it's all about controlling yourself, managing your power.
I didn't actually know that quote, so, but that sums up exactly everything that I believe. So,
I'll have to look
so
it up. Yeah. Go
yeah,
on.
that sums it up beautifully. Yeah, because I think Superman is a sort of Batman's a fantasy about punching and frightening the world into being a better place, whereas Superman is a sort of fantasy about showing the world a better way.
Mm-hmm.
So that is inherently a much more mature thing, I think. Some people might disagree. I don't know. So, what is your favorite bit of the film, Lamar?
My favorite. I mean, I don't know if I could nail down like a favorite because there's so much I love about that movie, especially the first half of it. You know, um, I think the first part that comes to mind with me is even to this day, excuse me, even to this day, like the way I deal with like stuff like that, as far as especially like with Superman and Lois Lane, I always deal with it with how Lois Lane is treated, you know. And uh the part that really got me is the part where Superman and Lois are flying and she's supposed to be like interviewing him or whatever, and they're like flying through the air and stuff like that. That part I think was the part that just had my brain blown because of the simple fact that if you go back and look at it now, it still looks good because of the way that they handled the special effects and things like that. And like there's even a part where they come back down, and if you listen closely to the audio, like when they go down through the cloud, you can actually hear them like the air going like that. You know, just I mean that part just kind of blew my mind. And Lois wasn't treated like a child or like an idiot, you know, in that particular scene, especially because it was obvious that while Superman was trying to maintain his secret identity, he wasn't trying to make Lois look stupid or foolish because the things that he was drawn to her, or the things that drew him to her, a lot of it had to do with her intellect and the way she took her job seriously, you know. And so um just that particular scene, like even now today, like I watch it and it has like an emotional effect on me, you know. Like sometimes I just cue it up every now and again, like when I'm feeling low, and I'll put that on and watch it, and then I feel good again, you know. So that one definitely did it for me.
Yeah, fantastic. So, Duy, what's your favorite bit of the whole film?
I might have a little bit of a hot take because I feel like if I talked about the parts that I really like, a lot of them are about the performances. And if I talk about the parts that I don't like, a lot of it is about the writing.
Yeah.
So for the performances are great. Christopher Reeve as Superman. Like I said, if I wrote down all the parts I don't like, it would be about the writing. And he carries the movie like on his shoulders, like literally. His performance as Superman is the anchor of the movie. And it is amazing that Christopher Reeve can walk into a room in that suit with no irony or self-consciousness whatsoever and have the presence to make you believe that he's Superman. And I think you can tell it because everyone else who has ever worn the suit afterwards, as much as they try to cast it to look like him, to resemble him, they just don't have his presence. They don't have his charisma. He has something else. He has an X factor that the rest of them don't have. But another thing that he does that the rest of them have never had, except weirdly for Brandon Routh in the CW, and not Brandon Routh in Superman Returns, is the ability to make you believe that Clark Kent and Superman are different people. Like anytime I show his Clark Kent to somebody who's like, all right, why would anyone believe that glasses can disguise you? I'm like, I show his Clark Kent. And if it's a woman I'm showing it to, a lot of the time they think he's cute. And exactly, nobody's going to believe that Clark Kent can possibly be Superman. Except maybe Lois Lane, who does figure it out in the next movie. And I also like the fact that, Lois Lane, I mean, it was the 70s. It was the era of women's lib, so it's to be expected. But I do like the fact that even if you go back all the way to the 30s, the 40s, Lois Lane is always portrayed as a woman who knows exactly what she wants and how she's going to get it. She is her own character. Of every love interest that has ever existed, Lois Lane could carry her own series better than anyone.
Definitely. Yeah.
And another thing that I really liked, Terrence Stamp. Now you talk about presence. Terrence Stamp has presence. And he's wearing a blanket. So.
And if you think about it as well, especially who they've got him standing next to, Terrence Stamp is like this tiny little guy, isn't he? But it doesn't feel like he's tiny.
No, not at all. Not at all, no.
Brilliant.
Your turn, Paul.
Well, my favorite bit is, like Lamar, it's very difficult to choose one, but I think it's catching Lois in the helicopter. You've got me, who's got you, that bit.
A great line.
Because that's the bit that I think every Superman film needs, and not every Superman film, even the animated stuff, has that. You just need that moment where it's like, yes, Superman's here, hooray! And Superman Returns had it, probably because it was so consciously trying to ape so much of the feel of the original Donner film. With that bit in Superman Returns when he catches the plane in the middle of the baseball stadium, that's an amazing bit, I think. And this is a very similar bit in feeling, in tone, in the original film when he catches that helicopter, and that moment that makes you want to cheer. And I was watching an animated, the most recent animated film, Superman Man of Tomorrow, recently. And, it says all these worthy things about Superman as an alien and Superman's place in the world and his mission. It says all these intelligent, worthy things, but there was no point where I was like, yay, Superman's here, And I think, and even Man of Steel, I love Man of Steel. And I love what it's trying to do, and I love how different it is. But, well, yeah, as you know, there is no bits in that where you're like, woo, it's Superman, yay.
No, there are moments where you're like, oh my God, it's Superman.
And, for people out there who love the Man of Steel, I love Man of Steel too, so I'm by no means trying to slag it off. But it doesn't have that moment that I think every Superman film needs, where you're just so pleased to see him. and so there's that bit. And the other bit I love, because it's so unique, and no other version of Superman has ever done this in the comics, in the cartoons, in any of the other films, the bit where he spends 12 years on his own in the fortress with Jor-El, like a sort of monk, or you know, trying to sort of prepare for his mission. This period of isolation and study. It's a really sort of, it emphasizes the sort of mythic qualities of the story, that he has to spend this period of preparation and isolation before he's ready to be Superman. And what I also like about it is that it also kind of explains some of his awkwardness as Clark, and maybe some of his awkwardness as Clark Kent isn't that much of an act, because he has literally been in a cave for 12 years. So I really like that bit, just for how unique it is.
Yeah, I think that what you just said, something that I think was powerful, because the Clark Kent that he was before he left, you know, and the Clark Kent that he ends up being when he's in Metropolis, they're almost two different people, you know. So yeah, I think that was brilliant that you brought that up.
Oh, cool, yeah. I just love how unique that is. Brings me to my next bit, and I'm going to go first on this one, is the least favorite bit. And this is such a minor niggle, and I actually do quite enjoy it for how rubbish it is. And it's like the sort of crack in the diamond, you know, the flaw in something perfect that makes it even more perfect, because it's got that tiny little flaw. My least favorite part of this film is the appalling performance of the pilot, who says, "We've got something. I don't know what, but we've got something. Just fly." That guy is ridiculous. So that's my least favorite bit. So, Duy, what is your least favorite bit, if any?
Lamar, go first, because I've got
Okay,
a few. I've got a few. I've got a few. I've got a few.
Okay. As far as scenes, I don't know if I have one, but I think like Duy said, you know, the writing in the movie isn't up to the caliber of the actors and the performances, you know. So I think the script, that's why I said, like, the first half of the movie, it's like almost nothing that can touch it, you know. And because all the stuff like from his formative years in Smallville, and all of the stuff with him, you know, just coming older, and then his father's, you know, death and stuff like that, which that in that particular scene, where, you know, he's lamenting his father's death and how he has all these powers and he can do all these things, and he couldn't save his father, you know, and that moment of self-doubt, that was a really powerful thing for me. And even now, because, you know, my godfather, peace be upon him, passed not too long ago, so I kind of felt that and went through that. But a lot of that stuff is just like, all of the good stuff, it seems like it's front loaded, you know. And so as the movie starts to progress, you start to see the flaws in the writing, you know, and they become more and more apparent, you know what I mean? But and as you know, as we were saying earlier, the performances and the ability of the actors pretty much elevate the movie beyond the script. But that would be like probably the thing that I just was like, you know, that I would have to kind of shake my head at a little bit and take issue with. Most of it has to do with the writing. I know my man got some stuff he want to say, so I'm gonna cut it short so he can he can do what he do, you know.
Go for it, tell you.
Gene Hackman played the best possible version of this Lex Luthor, but this is the worst possible version of Lex Luthor. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Like,
Exactly.
for the Lex Luthor that is written, Gene Hackman played him as best as he possibly could, but this should not have been the Lex Luthor in the movie.
But was there any other Lex Luthor at the time?
Well, whoever it was a movie. They should have blown it up instead of scaled it down.
So they were too close to the comic, do you think, in their depiction of Lex Luthor?
You know what you know what? No, because Lex Luthor of the Silver Age had a whole planet devoted to him named Lexor. So
Yes,
settling for destroying California. No.
It's a real estate scam, yeah.
The real estate scam Lex Luthor does not belong in a blockbuster movie. Another thing is, and I understand completely why they did it, but this is hard to get through if you're trying to watch it now. The Smallville sequence where they had another actor playing Clark, and they had Christopher Reeve dubbing over that actor.
Yeah.
That's hard. That's hard to watch, because I can't unhear Christopher Reeve, obviously. This might be controversial. I don't like the fact that they had the whole monologue from Jor-El that is supposed to be about Superman being like Jesus. Because I don't think I minded it until I found out that, Siegel and Schuster meant for him to be based on Moses.
Yeah.
And then I just felt it was... Is it cultural appropriation? It is, right?
I've never thought about it like that.
Yeah, because I've thought about that too. Yeah, I think that I think doing it like that, honestly, I found it to be like wildly inappropriate, considering the cultural aspects that went into the creation of Superman. I felt like I do think that I agree with you. I think the movie would have been better if they just would have canned that and left that part out, because it wasn't necessary. Like everything else that was great, that everything else was strong enough that they didn't need to do that. Because the way he played Superman, you would have had that feeling anyway.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it wasn't necessary. Yeah.
And it stayed with the character ever since.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But
I find that really interesting, because that speech, certainly since I've become an adult, has really always really resonated with me and spoken to me. And I love the idea of Superman being an ideal to strive towards. I love the idea that, okay, this person who won't get corrupted by absolute power may not exist, but we can strive towards that ideal. But it's interesting that that's the bit that's always resonated me, but I am white, Western, raised Christian. I'm not Christian now, but I was raised Christian, so it's maybe, of course it would resonate with me, because I guess it was designed to, but I've never thought about it as cultural appropriation before. But you're absolutely right. I mean, I think that's something that's valid to say.
But even then, it's a great speech on its own. It's really just that last line, "my only son."
Mm-hmm.
If you got rid of that, we're not having this conversation, and you still get that feeling anyway.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. That's good. That.
So that part's a little heavy-handed for me. But okay, now I'm going to talk about the part I really don't like: time traveling to reverse the Earth by however many hours. 24 hours? An hour? Just because he failed to save Lois, especially when you know what that's supposed to be. It's supposed to be because he failed to save the Earth from the Phantom Zoners. Because Superman 1 and 2 were supposed to be one long movie.
Right.
And so he fails to save the Earth from the Phantom Zoners, which makes more sense. But in this one, he fails to save Lois, and then he turns back time, which is, why didn't he do that in the first place? And second, don't turn back time. It's like the cheapest possible resolution. That's it. That's my big thing.
Can I counter that? Yeah.
Oh, go.
I love that bit. I'll tell you why. That's the bit where Superman becomes a man in that film. It's the bit where Superman fully becomes a human being, ironically, when he commits his most fantastic act, because that's the bit when he steps out from under Jor-El's shadow and explicitly disobeys him, and he does it for the love of an Earth woman, a human. So going back in time just to save Lois Lane, it's his most human act in the whole film, and I think that's beautiful. That's the most son becomes the father, father becomes the son bit, because that's the bit when he steps away from Jor-El completely, and becomes his own being, his own man, truly for the first time. So I love that bit.
I get what you're saying, and my counter to your counter is that it wouldn't work.
I will say though, in that scene, Margot Kidder,
Yeah.
She was great in that scene, man. Because I can only imagine how because basically she has a really gruesome death. There's not a lot of blood and stuff, but
Seriously,
just yeah, what happens to her though? Like she literally is in a car, the car gets swallowed up by the earth, and all of this stuff just kind of piles on top of her. Like just thinking about that is just kind of like, you know, and so for her to, be able to act through that, and just to be able to convey that sense of like horror that a person would have, the way she did, and it was very minimalist, right?
mm-hmm.
But like that part of it I think was just fantastic, because like I watch it sometimes now and I'm just like, geez, man, like how did she prepare for that? And then it kind of makes me wonder, like after it was over and she got cleaned up and stuff, like how did she feel? you know but yeah, so that's all I wanted to say about that. So y'all can keep countering one another as far as I'm concerned.
I mean, Paul, you work in the science field. You know this isn't gonna work.
In one science center I worked at, I was working alongside a work experience girl who was really into her science. And I was talking to her about Superman, as I often do with people. And she spent a great deal of time really earnestly explaining to me why yellow rays from the sun wouldn't give someone superpowers and why that wouldn't work. And
that person is from a red sun?
Yeah, well, she said apparently it wouldn't make any difference between red suns and yellow sun rays. It wouldn't make any difference at all. And she she really wanted me to understand, that this wasn't possible. And it's like, yeah, I know, but
what about Earth's lighter gravity?
Well, this is it. This is what obviously she hadn't taken into consideration,
Cool. Let's move on. But as I said, everything I mentioned there has something to do with the writing. And everything I mentioned under the best has something to do with the acting. So,
which brings me on to the next question, and you've touched on this already, Duy, the standout performances of the film. And I'm just going to say, you've said, why Reeve is fantastic, and I completely agree with you. And you said he carried the film. I'd say Kidder was equally important, I would say, because she's at a certain point of the film, she becomes the audience. To start off with, Superman's the outcast, young Clark's the outcast, and you're with him when he's in Smallville and he's finding himself. And then after that, then the audience becomes Kidder. So she has to carry that weight herself, and she does it so well. And that character is cynical. You'd have to, didn't she say to Superman at some point, or you'd have to convince everyone in Congress or something like that, or that you have to change the whole American political system or something like that, she says to him. And he sort of counters that with his sincerity. And that's something you were talking about, Duy, like Reeve, his believable sincerity. And she's the one who gets convinced by this person who's so sincere. And she's us in the sense that not only is she really cynical, she's really messy as well. She smokes, she spells things wrong, she gets changed to visit she's going to interview the president, and she gets changed in the box before she does it, just before her interview. So she's this really human person getting swayed and convinced by this pure person, this purely good person. It's such an important role, and she does so much with it. So for me, that's the other standout performance. Lamar, would you say there are any other standout performances in the film? What are your favorite performances?
Let me see. honestly, there's pretty much for the most part, just the cast itself and everybody like did what they were supposed to do with the script. And I think in a lot of ways, pretty much everybody elevated the script, even like his parents, they were fantastic, as his playing his parents. And Jimmy Olsen, of course, he was great because and that part is probably one of the most difficult to really get right because there's a certain exuberance about Jimmy Olsen, and if you go if you go too extreme with it,
Yeah.
he seems like a child, and if you don't go far enough, the character doesn't have impact. You know,
He's useless.
yeah, there's really there's no reason for him to be there,
Yeah.
right? So, so I think all of those people like in the bullpen, so to speak, on the job, like all of those people, Perry White, like all of those people were great. And in a lot of ways, you get a sense of how they see Superman and this new phenomenon of this being that can do all of these things that other people can't do. And through their own eyes, they're kind of captivated by it, and they internalize what they're dealing with in different ways. Like with Perry, for example, he just kind of throws himself into the work. So he wants to know everything about this guy. Like, and he's like, hey, listen, can we trust this dude? And so, of course, I would expect somebody like him to say something like that because I think that that's a viable thing. Like,
It's his
this
job.
guy can, yeah, you know what I mean? Yeah, it's like, can we trust this dude? Is he going to flip on us? And if we don't do what he thinks we should be doing, like, those are very legitimate concerns. But I think that that's a stark contrast between this movie and like Man of Steel, because Man of Steel was kind of all about that and how people were being cynical about it and stuff like that. Whereas opposed with this movie, it was like, hey, listen, this is a possibility now. We're not stupid, but you know, and I think this drives home what Dory was talking about how the performances kind of moved the movie in a direction to where its greatness as a film is pretty much almost exclusively tied to the performances. So I don't know if I could pick out one in particular, um, but yeah, outside of what we've already mentioned about,
What about Gene Hackman?
See, you gonna make me do it, right? But like you said, I mean, the version of Superman in that script, I don't think anybody could have done a better job at it than that. But also at the same time, Gene Hackman pretty much was like, man, I did that for the check, man. You know,
That's true.
so you know what I mean, and you kind of get that. But I think that actually lent to his performance because that's what Luthor is about. He's everything he does is self-serving.
He ate up the scenery too.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
if it was any other role, I would have said like, yeah, this is a great role. Like he's clearly having fun. It's just I know what Luthor is supposed to be. So
yeah, but there are bits of the real Luthor in it. That's why it's great. So like when Miss Tessmacher, when he's talking about he's going to shoot the missiles and blow the little towns up, and then she's like, wait a minute, my mother lives there. So he looks at his watch and he's like, no, she don't. You know what I mean? That's the real Luthor, right? You see what I'm saying? So and that was a great bit, but but also we can't forget Ned Beatty as Otis. I'd be remiss if we didn't mention that dude, because to this day that man is Otis. You understand? Like, like he was great in for what he was doing in that movie, man.
That guy is Otis. He's never been anything else.
yeah.
Certainly not Deliverance.
Well, hey, know what though? When I watch
I'd
Deliverance now,
as Otis than the guy in Deliverance.
yeah, that was like when I watch it now. You know what I mean? Like I'm like, God dang, man, Otis is catching it in this movie, man. You know what I mean? yeah. Ned Beatty was kind of like he was so insane in that movie. It kind of like makes you forget how insane the version of Luthor is in that movie because he's kind of the straight man for Otis. You know what I mean?
Seriously.
Yeah.
I really love Hackman's delivery of this old, diseased maniac, when he's advancing on Superman with the kryptonite. I really love the cruelty and the sarcasm in his delivery there. I think that's one example of him being quite subtle, I think. And as you said, there aren't that many examples of him being subtle in that film.
Mm-hmm.
Duy, have you got anything to add about the
No,
performance?
it's just Margot Kidder gets a lot of flack. I think basically because of the way Margot Kidder's life went. But she's great in this movie. And I never really considered that. The reason that we as an audience are able to buy Christopher Reeve, in addition to Christopher Reeve, is because Margot Kidder's character buys into him. Which leads me to the question, did this movie start off cynicism as a Lois Lane trait? Because her one and only defining trait in the Silver Age is she wanted to marry Superman.
She's quite cynical about Clark, isn't she? In the Golden Age, in the comics, she's very sort of dismissive of him, and
well, that's because she doesn't like him.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if you'd call that cynicism necessarily. Maybe, yeah. It's an interesting thing to think about. That,
yeah. By the time you get to post-crisis, that's her character.
Yeah. I also think too, it's clear, you know, because like she's always like she kind of looks at Clark, you know, as like you kind of like would almost be like lost without me. So I have to give you like pep talks and I have to tell you these things because because Metropolis will eat you up and spit you out if I don't, because you're just like a little farm boy and stuff like that. But I think it's clear that she does actually care about him, which is a different dynamic. Because like you said, a lot of times in the comics and stuff, she's portrayed as like not liking him or not wanting to be bothered with him. You know what I mean? And but it's just they're dynamic as Superman is playing Clark Kent as, like somewhat like an exaggerated caricature. Like he knows how she likes her breakfast, and like you said, she eats hamburgers for breakfast, right? You know what I mean? And so he knows that, and even though he might say something to her about it, he's gonna go get her the hamburger and the orange juice, like, you know what I mean? So it's that their interplay with one another is just really, really cute, and it makes you smile when you look at it,
Agreed.
I think that's one of the funniest bits of Lois being this sort of imperfect, flawed human, is her asking for orange juice because she's on a health kick, but she's got a faggot coming out of her mouth.
That's it for my answer to that question.
Well, it does bring me nicely to the next question, whereas how does the film work as a superhero film? How does it compare to the superhero films that came later, and how influential do you think it's been on superhero films as a genre? So, Lamar, what do you think?
In a lot of ways, Superman wrote the playbook for like comic book films, and some of it has kind of gone by the wayside because of the climate and things like that, and how the times have changed. But I still think that the things that made that movie work, if you were to put it out today, and let's just say we could take the same actors and the movie never existed, and all of the actors were still alive and they were viable and healthy, and it was today instead of back then, you could put that movie out right now and it would still be a fantastic film. Because, and a lot of it is like what we've been saying, is because of the performances and how good the actors were. So, that's not going to necessarily change with the times. If you're good at your job, you're good at your job, and those aspects of Superman and the characters around him that are timeless, they still work today, right? You wouldn't necessarily see Lois like punching at a typewriter, she'd probably have an iMac or something at her desk, but for example, but the themes still work. The characters still work. And we know that because they try to do different things with these characters in the comics and in the different media portrayals. And it doesn't work. And there's a reason for that, So that movie, I think, was very influential on the industry because it showed that these characters and things are viable, like with these big budgets. You can put a lot of money into these things and it'll work. And it also freed people's minds to be creative, you know? And so I think that the industry itself, as well as the actors who came afterwards, I think if I was like a director and I was creating one of these movies, that's one of the movies that I would tell people to watch, regardless of what the subject matter is. It's one I would be like, listen, this is a movie you need to watch and just pay attention to what's happening. I don't care whether you like it or not. When it's over, just watch what's happening. You know.
Duy, what do you think?
I think it was necessary because you got to remember the superhero before Christopher Reeve that people knew was Adam West. This incredibly tongue-in-cheek, self-aware, comedic version of Batman. So you needed somebody to play a character just so earnestly that they believed it and that the audience would believe it. Also, you needed somebody with that kind of power to kind of just on a very technical level to kind of prove that the special effects could handle it.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually, like, the special effects eventually did catch up. And you needed that kind of thing to show that as long as the person carrying the role believes what he's doing, the audience will buy it. More like, and you can see that in a lot of comic book movies. A lot of comic book movies, you can absolutely see when the actor is buying their character. In the most direct possible way I can put this, Chris Evans playing Captain America now does not happen without Christopher Reeve playing Superman.
Yeah.
It's almost definitely like he looked at how Christopher Reeve played Superman and decided, I'm going to do that. And you can see it with Chris Evans, because Chris Evans on social media basically has turned into Captain America, which is like how Christopher Reeve eventually did at some point turn into Superman. So I think it was absolutely necessary for all of the technical flaws that you can throw at the movie, because it was 1978 and it was the first of its kind. So much doesn't exist without it. Even if you want to go, even if you want to say Batman 1989 works really well because of the contrast to what's been established.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this was true, but apparently a lot of the success of Superman the movie is because a lot of people were really pissed off about the American political climate back then, like Watergate and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And they were just really happy to see somebody like Superman on the screen.
Yeah.
I believe it. So.
Yeah, which is
That makes
funny.
a lot of sense.
Because when you said that, it made me think about something. You know, people say they don't like Superman because he's not relatable. But I think, especially in this year that we're in right now, if somebody could swoop down out the sky and solve all these problems and everything would be great after that, that's very easily relatable.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, to me it is. You know, because I don't think relatability is all about seeing yourself in a character so much, but it can also be like in a greater sense of when we look at what's happening now, would this character make our world better? And Christopher Reeve as Superman is resoundingly yes.
Or like aspirational.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like it's something, it's not, I don't see myself in that person, but I would like to.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
An ideal to strive towards.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if a lot of the influence of the film, particularly in subsequent Superman films, has been people reacting against that film. Like, it was so definitive that as Superman, that either subsequent Superman films have tried to just imitate it, like Superman Returns, or do Superman with a twist, It's a bit like Sherlock Holmes. I don't know if you're familiar with Jeremy Brett depicting Sherlock Holmes on TV in the UK in the 80s. And that performance was so close to the books and so definitive and archetypal that what we're seeing, whenever we see Sherlock Holmes these days, it's always Sherlock Holmes, but it's all steampunk, or Sherlock Holmes, but it's his sister, and it's Sherlock Holmes, but this, but that. And I feel it's a bit like that with Superman now, is that it's like Superman, but this, it's Superman, but that. And that's what we're seeing with Man of Steel and depictions like that, or even things like The Boys, and it's Superman, but he's evil, or whatever. So I wonder if its influence as it has come from giving people a standard, a baseline to react against. Maybe, I don't know.
Superman, I mean, well, one thing I did notice is that they keep casting people who look like Christopher Reeve, and maybe they should stop doing that. Maybe they should stop. Maybe they should stop making that the basis for their casting decisions.
Yeah, there's a lot in that. Yeah. So my next question is, and I think Lamar's touched on this a bit, how does it stand up, regardless of genre, as a film in its own right? Duy, what do you think?
Stand up in 2020?
Yeah, stand up as a film. Like, is it just a good superhero film, or is it just a great movie?
You're talking to a guy who doesn't like Star Wars.
Okay.
I believe you know that every time Star Wars gets brought up, I like to call it bathrobes and flashlights. Superman the movie is better than Star Wars.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. That's how well it stands up. Take that for what you will. Superman the movie is better than Star Wars. I will say one thing about how it stood up, and one thing that really makes it and Star Wars stand the test of time. John Williams. Like, I can't believe it's taken us this long to mention him, but when John Williams does the score on a movie, that movie's gonna stick in your mind. It's like a Pavlovian bell.
Yeah.
It just feels really good once you start hearing that music.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think like people talk about Danny Elfman in the same way, but he doesn't. I mean, obviously he did a good job with Batman, but I think that Danny Elfman's music kind of is just and it kind of blends into one. Whereas John Williams, like, you associate them with whatever film they're from, don't you? Yeah, they really stand out.
John Williams, and there's a hopeful element to John Williams's music, which you need for Superman, and in Star Wars, it's actually called A New Hope. So, the other guy that I think is able to do that is Alan Silvestri.
Yeah,
Avengers and Back to the Future. So, but John Williams, it's just as much as Star Wars stands out to people, I'd say Superman is just as good, and I don't know if that's praise coming from me, but I would put it up against any of the special effects movies of the 70s. Absolutely.
Definitely. Yeah. And a testament to that, what you were just saying, there's a scene where like Superman comes and gets the girl's cat out of the tree. And I don't think people understand how difficult it is, because at the end of it, when he gets the cat out of the tree and he flies off, and he's kind of like twisting in the air as he's flying off. Like, I don't think people understand how difficult to do that is to do without a computer, and to have it look as good, it still looks good. And so like that movie literally made people think that people could actually fly, because they're looking for the wires and stuff. You know what I mean? But it's not like when you're watching like these kung fu movies and they're doing the wire work and you can see the wires and all of that kind of stuff. But it's um like that kind of, he really gave the special effects gave Superman that grace, so it wasn't just the power, it was the grace too. That kind of stuff is hard to do, and a lot of times they try to do it now and don't get it right.
It's interesting. I'd like to go back to that sort of Grant Morrison quote we were talking about earlier.
Oh, I found it. Go
for it. Yeah,
okay, so he says, so it's a little bit of a long quote, but what he's saying is, I felt I'd really grasped the concept when I saw him as everyman, or rather as the dream self of everyman. That S is the radiant emblem of divinity we reveal when we rip off our stuffy shirts, our social masks, our neuroses, our constructed selves, and become who we truly are. Batman is obviously much cooler, but that's because he's a very energetic and adolescent fantasy character. A handsome billionaire playboy in black leather with a butler at his beck and call, better cars and gadgetry than James Bond, a horde of fetish femme fatales baying around his heels, and no boss. That guy's Superman day and night. Superman grew up baling hay on a farm. He goes to work for a boss in an office. He pines after a hard-working gal. Only when he tears off his shirt does that heroic, ideal inner self come to life. That's actually a much more adult fantasy than the one Batman's peddling. But it also makes Superman a little harder to sell. He's much more of a working-class superhero. American writers often say they find it difficult to write Superman. They say he's too powerful. You can't give him problems. But Superman is a metaphor. For me, Superman has the same problems we do, but on a Paul Bunyan scale. If Superman walks the dog, he walks it around the asteroid belt because it can fly in space. When Superman's relatives visit, they come from the 31st century and bring some hellish monster conqueror from the future. But it's still a story about your relatives visiting.
That's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
So the reason I wanted to bring that up again is because I want to talk about some more about what that film has to say to modern audiences and if it still works for modern audiences. And the thing that made me think about it was I showed it for, we've got a film club in work where occasionally we'll show films for staff in the planetarium. And I got them to show Superman, and I actually bought the Blu-ray even before I even owned a Blu-ray player, just so I could show it in the planetarium. And our co-worker bought his teenage son, and his teenage son enjoyed it, but was kind of laughing at certain bits. Like particularly, I remember him laughing at the end. And it's fair enough. I'm not having to go at him for laughing or anything. But he was laughing at the bit where Superman said to the prison warden, "We're all working for the same team," or whatever. And his conclusion at the end was like, "Oh, it was cheesy, kind of so bad it's good," kind of thing. And I find it really interesting that he appreciated it on that level, which is obviously not a level I've ever sort of appreciated it on. But then I remembered as well, I sort of worked alongside a teacher when I was doing my teaching course. This was about 15 years ago, and she had a very young son who watched Superman and Superman 2 every single day. He was about 5 years old or something. And she'd always randomly hear him say things like, "Luthor, you poisonous snake," and things like that, which is really cute. So obviously this film really resonated with him and really resonated with me as an adult. And that got me thinking of how maybe it is just a film that isn't for teenagers. But what do you guys think? How does it sit with modern audiences, do you think?
I think if you were to make somebody watch it,
yeah,
especially in the wake of Marvel movies.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially in the wake of Marvel movies. If you were to make somebody watch it, those first 20 minutes can be tough. Because the first 10 or 15 don't even, like, they take place on Krypton, and it's got the Godfather in it. which is weird, right? So
yeah.
And then the next thing you have is the Smallville parts where Clark Kent is dubbed over by Christopher Reeve. And now whether or not that's going to bother you, it bothered me the last time I tried watching it. Well, whether or not that's going to bother you, I'm like, I don't know. So it doesn't really get going until he's out of the fortress. But I think once he's out of the fortress, it's just a super solid movie until he turns back time. So I don't know. I think it would be tough in the wake of the Marvel movies, just because the Marvel movies have raised the bar so high. But that bar exists because of Superman.
Mm-mm. Lamar, what do you think?
I'm gonna liken this to something that an experience I had with a coworker, right? And he was a guitarist, right? And he played like several different types of guitar. So he played like the electric guitar, the steel string guitar, and all of that. And one day we were at work, and I was listening to Wes Montgomery. I don't know if y'all know who he is, but he's a jazz guitarist. And he asked me what I was listening to because he heard the guitar, and I was telling him about him, and he had never heard about him. He was a little younger than me. And so I was like, if you're a guitarist, man, you might want to listen to it because he's a very influential guitarist. He had an influence on rock guitarists in the 70s and all of that kind of stuff. And so he was listening to it, and he was like, I'm not really, he's playing, like his playing is great, but he's not really like doing anything like with his licks or anything that I've never heard anybody do. And so I was like, well, one thing I want you to understand is that when he plays, he doesn't use a pick. And he was like, hold up, what? And I was like, he doesn't use a pick. He has a callus that he built up on his thumb. And that's what he's using to alter the tunings of the strings and stuff. So when you're hearing him go between these notes and stuff, it's him doing it with his thumb and the callus on his thumb. And so, like, he literally didn't say anything because it blew his mind once I told him that, right? So then the next day, we left for the weekend, and then he comes back Monday. He was like, man, listen, I went and downloaded all of his music, man. This guy is amazing. Because I thought he was a guy with a pick just playing. But when you told me he was doing it with his thumb and he was shifting his thumb to make, and he was like, oh my gosh, this movie is like that, right? In the sense that if you look at it from a 2020 standpoint, and you're talking about CGI and things like that, where pretty much everything's done in the box now. So, guys like in the 80s, like Rick Baker and those type of guys, they're kind of out of a job now. If this was the same era, because they do everything in the computer. But in 1978, you got to figure there was no precedent for this, And so when you kind of are the first of your kind and you step out there, you're going to stumble a little bit, But a lot of times, though, you're driven by this passion and this innovation for the ideas, and it comes through in the work you do, And so sometimes people may not necessarily have all the details and stuff. Like you have to tell them, listen, people weren't using computers to do things. There weren't constant internet sneak peeks on movies and stuff. So you would have the trailers before other movies, and you would have the commercials. You might have something on Entertainment Tonight or something where somebody talked about something, but that was about it. So when you went into these movies, for the most part, you went in cold. And unless you bought unless you had the book, because back then the movies would come with these booklets, right? And I still have the Superman booklet too. It's at my office. But and you would thumb through it, and it would give you little things. But other than that, you kind of went into these movies cold. So people coming into this movie and they saw something they had never seen before, because Superman flying in this movie was totally different than like watching a Captain Marvel serial where they show him like jumping through a window, or like, and then the next thing he just rams into like 3 or 4 guys and knocks them on the ground. Like this is not what's happening. Or even with George Reeves, when they would do camera tricks. Yeah. They do the camera tricks and things like that, and move things and do things like that. Like, no, they were doing something that
there's always that standard shot where they're just kind of lying on their stomach.
Yeah.
The background.
Yeah. And the background kind of moves behind them and stuff, And so it's like they were doing something a little more intricate and sophisticated in this movie, and it hadn't really been done before. And so sometimes you kind of have to fill in the gaps for people, especially for young people. But if you look at, like, I think the performances hold up against anything, and they always will, when it comes to that. But with a movie like this, sometimes you kind of have to give people a little preface before you give it to them. You know what I mean? And sometimes you'll have to do it after the fact. But
Yeah.
the best things about the film and the things that make it work will always be viable.
Lovely. So we touched upon them a little bit. So perhaps we finish by saying the sequels. How do you guys rate the sequels? So, Duy.
I like 2 better than 1.
Really?
I do, yeah.
I find that really interesting. I've heard a lot of people saying, because I can't get past the 2 films smushed together. I find Richard Lester, he's so different in tone from Richard Donner, and I can never get past that. But I love Superman 2, but for that reason, I just can't get past that. So what?
It's ridiculous, and I think you can tell when it changes. The moment they go back to the fortress and he throws that cellophane S. No, wait, no, even before that, when the Phantom Zoners are using the super breath and it's just this ridiculously comedic. I hate that part. But I love Superman 2 for a couple of reasons, more than one, and that is because there's more Superman and Lois. That entire scene at Niagara Falls, when she finally discovers who he is. I love when Lois knows who Clark is. Like, I just love it. I love when Lois knows who Clark is. So there's that part where, his glasses fall into the fire and then he got to pick it up and then she figures out who he is. And he just shifts his body to go from sheepish Clark Kent to Superman in one go. It's like the story about Marilyn Monroe. You guys ever hear this story? There was a photographer that went around with with Norma Jean one day, and nobody was paying attention to her. And then finally she just looks at him and says, "Do you want to see her? Do you want to see Marilyn?" And then she just changed very slightly the way she walked and carried herself, and all of a sudden the crowd is like, "Oh my God, it's Marilyn Monroe." And when I heard that story, I was like, yeah, that's pretty much how I envision Clark Kent and Superman the shift would be. But the other reason I love Superman 2 is Terrence Stamp.
Yeah,
he's so good. The scene where Terrence Stamp where Zod takes Non and Ursa into the White House and makes the president kneel before him, and then he is like, "You are not the president. No one who leads so many would bow so easily." It's just such a great scene. And "Come to me, son of Jor-El, kneel before." The whole thing where it's like, "General, would you like to step outside? Come to me, son of Jor-El, kneel before Zod." That's amazing. And then they had to go ruin it with a super cellophane S and the super memory wiping kiss. And but up to that exact point, I liked Superman 2 more than 1.
I know what you mean, but it's interesting how Richard Lester's the silly one, and traditionally, he makes films that sort of pricking the pomposity of mythical things. He made Robin and Marion and Hard Day's Night, things like that. So he's kind of the silly director. But that bit in the Niagara Falls, that's all him. That's all the Lester film, and that's
really it's in the Donner cut.
Well, my understanding of this, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I thought that Donner envisioned Lois pretending to shoot Clark.
No, yeah, that's what's in the Donner cut. You're right.
Yeah. And they only ever had that as a screen test. But I hate that scene myself.
I don't like it.
I find the subtlety of Clark just subconsciously wanting to tell her, so he does something as ridiculous as tripping into a fire. I love that. That's so much better than the gun scene.
It's better, yeah.
And also that even though Lester's remembered as the silly one, I find it interesting that in the Donner cut, there's loads of scenes that have been chopped out of the Lester cut, like Miss Tessmacher using the crapper in the Fortress of Solitude. And Donner's the serious one, the legendary mythic kind of tone one. And there's a scene of Miss Tessmacher using the crapper.
Hey, do you think if you were to remake, the whole movie or whatever, do you think there's a place for Miss Tessmacher and Otis in 2020, or are they like comedy properties of their time?
I think Miss Tessmacher more than Otis, because I think Parker Posey in Superman Returns is one of the better aspects of that film. I think she's really good in it, and her character's really good. So,
They
I think
did
Miss
revise her a bit, though. But I mean,
yeah, I mean, she's not Miss Tessmacher, but she's a Miss Tessmacher-esque character.
wouldn't you just replace her now with Mercy Graves?
Yeah, that would be better. I don't know, because Mercy Graves is a bit more sort of grim and Amazonian, whereas you've got that sort of, and maybe with Luthor being even more evil in the new films, which presumably he would be, you'd need someone who's a bit less serious alongside him. I think for that role, Miss Tessmacher would work these days better than Otis.
You think Otis? What do you think, Lamar? Do you think Otis would be? Otis feels like he's a very 70s type character to me. I'm not sure if.
Well, you know what? Listen, I ain't riding against Otis on nothing. That's just me, right? Listen, I'm gonna say, yeah, Otis can be in the joint today, but yeah, I think the way that, especially in the way he dressed, because like, you
look like Woozy Winked.
I was about to say that. Yeah. So it was just kind of like he was too much a product of his era, but I think that was kind of the point. You know what I mean? So I could see, because he was like so 70s to the point that it was like, dog, the 70s is about to be over now. We got 2 more years of this, man, and you acting like it's 72. You know what I mean? So you could certainly do Otis today. You could do it like, whereas instead, this is 2020, so you could have him, there's a lot of different ways you could do it. I mean, you could do it like, I just like the 70s stuff, and this is who I like. It's a lot of different ways you could do it. You'd have to kind of change it a little bit though. But to kind of get like a more contemporary feel to it, and why, just him being who he was just all wrong to begin with, even though essentially down in his heart he was a good dude. I think that's why his character worked so well, because he was a good guy, even though he was, he wasn't very intelligent, and the only way that he could get over it and keep himself going is with a guy like Luthor, who paid him probably more than he was worth to start with. You know what I mean? Like, I know a guy at my job right now that's Otis. So yeah, so
So Lamar, what do you make of the sequels?
Yeah.
The sequels, Superman 2, I think, is a better crafted film than the first one. It's better from that standpoint as a film. The script was better, and all of that was better. The people who came back for this one, their performances were stellar yet again. We get to see a lot of great moments, like what Duy was saying with the Superman Lois dynamic, and the way that they handled the dynamic in that movie, where she figures out that he's Superman, because she kind of suspects it by this point. So she starts actively doing things to try to put him in a trick bag, And so I thought that was cute, like I really like that. Like even now I look at that stuff and it just makes me smile, but it plays up the fact that Lois Lane is not, she's not the damsel in distress thing, She's very gung-ho about her job. She takes it serious. And because of that, she kind of lives like a haphazard lifestyle. So, of course, so in this movie, she puts herself into situations where Superman can save her, because she does it like, because she's trying to expose Clark, not because she needs saving. You know what I mean? So, and then when she finally like puts everything together, and now she's like, I already know this guy's Superman, but let me kind of put it out there so that, so I'll know. And so like the part at the fireplace and stuff, and they're in the love suite, and everything's like pink and red, which is hilarious, right? And so he sticks his hand in the fireplace to get the glasses out after he trips, which of course in the movie the trip wasn't like an act, it was really a mistake he made. But he sticks his hand in, and she's like, "Let me see it. It's got to be it's got to be burned bad, or whatever." And he's like, "Oh, come on, Lois." And then that's when he does the shift, and he's like, "All right, yeah, this is me, right?" And I thought that was a really good scene, and also it showed that he took Lois serious, and that even he was just trying to conceal his identity. He wasn't trying to gaslight her. You know what I mean? Like he was just trying to keep his identity, because honestly, you could tell he wanted to keep her safe. Because when you have people that know your secrets like that, when it comes to something like that, they're automatically put in danger. That's a common thing with Spider-Man. But
all the time,
constantly. They can't, like, for some reason they keep going back to it. But Terrence Stamp, he still has my vote as the greatest villain in a superhero movie ever. Like, I mean,
I love
those
him.
of you,
I love him.
Yeah, he's fantastic, man. Anybody who's never seen this movie, punch up Terrence Stamp, General Zod. I want you to look at what he was wearing, okay? And when you see what he was wearing,
He's
and then
balding,
you go back
he's tiny.
yeah. And I mean, like I said, we at the end of the 70s. So this guy is like Studio 54 to the max, right? And so, and it's like, dude, when you this nice with it, it's like, it don't matter what you wearing. Like, this guy is like, I mean, everything he's in, like the part you were talking about the president scene. The first thing he says when he walks in, he sees the eagle, and he's like, "Yeah, I see you're used to worshiping things that fly." I was like, yo.
What a line.
Oh my God. Yo, man, he was fantastic, and he went out of his way, and I think this is a kind of a subtle thing. He went out of his way to not call Superman by his Kryptonian name. He would always refer to it. Yeah, he always says the son of Jor-El, right? And then when the guys like the other part I love is when they basically like, I know somebody who's not gonna bow down to you. And so he's like, who is this imbecile? Like dog, I don't even care who it is. Like, where is he? Because I got to go get him. And then when he finds out that this person they've been talking about is the person he's been looking for, and he just kind of like, he goes bonkers, right? And so just all of that, man, he is amazing in this movie. Like, at that point, I was like, man, I know a lot of people love Heath Ledger and his performance, and it was fantastic. I know a lot of people love, like a lot of the, Hiddleston and all of that. And I love them too. You know what I mean? I give it up to them because they embodied those roles. So you won't hear any argument from me, but Terrence Stamp as General Zod is the one to this day. And the reason why that's important is because Christopher Reeve as Superman is the one to this day. You know what I mean? And I mean, just like, man, I want to go watch it right now, man. You know what I mean?
Terrence Stamp as General Zod, like, gives me a feeling of dread that is matched only by Thanos, and he's like 95% CGI.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
Terrence Stamp is a dude in a bathrobe.
He's in a bathrobe, and he's not like a tall person. He doesn't have like, it's everything else. Like, he has that intangible, like Christopher Reeve had. It's just this thing that he has, and it's just amazing to watch him on screen, no matter who he's with, whether he's with Sarah Douglas, who played Ursa, and she was great in that too, yeah. And
Non,
and Jack O'Halloran, and just seeing them on screen interact with one another, and he still, even though he was with him and stuff, it kind of gives you that feel like if one of them would have crossed them, they out of here, right? With no problem. You know what I mean? So he was just nothing. It's not enough I could say about him in that role. And most of the quotables in that movie come straight from him. Most of them.
I love how he says Superman, like he's never heard the word Superman before.
Yeah.
Like this Superman is nothing of the kind. Like he never said or uttered the word Superman before. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Ursa says Superman once, and it's like, Superman.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, man. Yeah, because he was like, Yeah, see, because when the guy told him, he was like, "Well, nah, don't, Superman is gonna stop you," and he just goes crazy. He's like, "Who is this Superman? Where is he?" Like, I mean, he's it's great, man. It is fantastic. It's over the top in the best way possible.
We are on Planet Houston.
Yeah, that's the other joint, the Planet Houston. He's like, "No, the Planet Earth, dude. Like, what are you talking about?" And like the
Why
part
does he know what water is? That's what I don't understand.
why does what?
Is there no water on Krypton?
Yeah,
I don't
Zod
think so.
in a lake, doesn't he? And he's acting like he doesn't know what water is.
Yeah,
How is there no water on Krypton? The entire Fortress of Solitude is made of ice.
Yeah,
that must be it, I guess.
I tell you what, he figured out how to walk on it real quick. I'm gonna tell you that now. You know what I mean? And that was kind of crazy. Watching him come down and he just starts walking on the water, and it's like, hey man, y'all in a lot of trouble, bro. I don't know if y'all notice or not. You in a lot of trouble now. But the subsequent sequels, for the most part, they tend to fall under the category of when somebody brings them up, I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. It don't exist.
So here's my question. Superman Returns ostensibly takes place instead of 3 and 4. But if you had to pick just one, would it be 3 and 4 or Returns?
Returns. For me, Returns. I love Returns. I like 3 and 4, but I love Returns. The flaw with Returns is that the Brandon Routh and you have to remind me, the lady playing
Kate Bosworth.
Lois. Kate Bosworth. They're far too young, and they're good. Particularly Brandon Routh is great, but if they had deliberately chosen older actors who are getting closer to middle age, and that would have emphasized this storyline of it's Superman in the future. It's Superman when he's had a son. He's been away for 5 years. That poignancy in the story would have been emphasized so much, and it would be a perfect sequel to those first two films. So, but other than that, I really love Superman Returns. I think it works really well as a sequel to the first two.
I have a soft spot. I have a soft spot for the Nuclear Man. And his deadly black fingernails. I know it's terrible, but I've got a soft spot for him. So,
what do you think, Lamar?
You know what? For me, it comes down to, okay, it comes down to what I want to put up with, right? So, do I want to put up with how they had Brainiac and Bizarro in the same movie, and they still couldn't make it work with either one of them?
Oh my God, that's Brainiac and Bizarro.
Yeah.
That's what it's supposed to be. I never made the connection. Wow, Superman 3 really sucks.
Yeah. You see where I'm coming from, right? Yeah. It's like, man, how y'all have both of them in the joint, and you got Bizarro in getting drunk, eating peanuts, like, you know what I mean? So, and thumping peanuts into the mirrors and stuff like that. But like, would I rather put up with that? The Richard Pryor stuff was okay with me. I didn't have too much of a problem with that. And like you said, the Nuclear Man stuff, like, it's just so zany, so much so that Bendis actually brought him back just to kill him. So he was only on panel for like 1 page, and then he was dead. You know what I mean?
That hurt my feelings, Brian. I'm just kidding. Please give me an interview, Brian.
So it's like, would I rather put up with that and Lex Luthor's nephew, Ducky? We know he's not Ducky in the movie, but he's Ducky, right? John Cryer is who I'm talking about, if y'all don't know. But where he managed to find someone that was even more incompetent than Otis. But would I rather put up with that, or would I rather put up with Superman succumbing to getting a kryptonite piece stuck in his back and being debilitated and almost dying, and then pushing while having it in his back, he somehow gains the strength to push this giant kryptonite island up into the sky, and then he falls out and ends up in the hospital. And then at the end of the movie, he becomes a deadbeat father. So which one would I rather deal with, right? What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just do it like this. Give me the part where Otis in it. That's where I'm going, right? So yeah, Otis in number 3. So yeah, give me 3 and 4 just off that. You know what I mean?
And you're just gonna skip
that.
through the rest of it.
Yeah, the rest of it don't exist.
John Cryer played Luthor's nephew and is now playing Luthor in the CW.
And he's a good Luthor.
He's good, yeah.
He's a good Luthor. That's true.
Yeah.
That's really weird.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a question for Duy. You know, you've been talking about how Luthor is written and the scope of Luthor's ambition in the first film. Is Robert Vaughn's character in Superman 3, as written, not performed, is he a better Luthor than Gene Hackman's Luthor?
Well, first of all, I want to say Superman 2 upgrades Luthor from a continent to a country. No, from a state to a country instead of California, it's Australia. And I have no idea, Paul. I don't really remember 3. I haven't
Fair enough.
I haven't seen 3 in like 20 years, so I have no clue.
What do you think, Lamar?
I will say that disappointed me with Superman Returns when, you had some guy I'm not gonna name, but with a lot of talent and everything, and they went back to real estate scam Luthor. Yeah.
What do you think, Lamar? Do you think Robert Vaughn's character is a better Luthor on paper?
I think when you couple like the script with the person playing it, who had the role, he probably should have been, right? But it's weird because it happens. Superman 3 exists almost in a vacuum, kind of, as far as the things that are going on in it, right? Because a lot of it is so far removed from the other movies. But I like the Smallville stuff. You know what I mean? And that's one thing I wanted to say too about the first Superman movie. The Smallville scenes were beautifully shot, right? Just looking at the Smallville stuff, it's beautiful to watch that stuff. So
it actually fits almost seamlessly with Smallville, the TV show. It's an easy transition.
Yeah, it is. It really, really is. And the Smallville stuff here was great too. Like even the Lana Lang stuff, which I liked a lot. It's kind of hard for me to say because it almost exists in its own thing almost because of all the insanity that's going on throughout that movie. You know what I mean? And Richard Pryor as Gus. It's like, we know they put him in the movie because they wanted somebody who was hot at the moment to be in the movie, right? So they basically were like, we're gonna take Richard Pryor and make him a guy that works at a desk and who's pushing paperwork for bank accounts. And he comes up with this scheme where he skims 2 or 3 pennies off of $1 here and there, and he makes himself like a millionaire. You know what I mean? So, and all of that. And so, but it almost kind of, like I said, it's weird because it kind of exists in its own thing. And Superman 4, which of course by that time Christopher Reeve started actually having a bigger hand in creative control, and he started to put more of himself into the movies and stuff. So the whole thing about getting rid of the nuclear weapons and all of that, there were some good themes in the movie, but it was just like a lot going on that worked it kind of cannibalized itself, and I think with number 3, it was just a weird movie, You know what I mean? But the parts I loved, I loved it. But just as a whole, it's kind of really hard to nail down, within the framework of that whole Superman movie universe.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I find it really interesting. This Superman 4, I think it could have been good if there'd been people behind it who were interested in putting money towards it. I remember watching some of the Richard Donner commentary on either 1 or 2, and they're talking about how much they like Christopher Reeve, and they're talking about how he made a mistake with Superman 4 by wanting to put the nuclear weapon stuff in, and how Superman as a character isn't built to deal with those themes, which I don't agree with.
I don't agree with that.
Yeah, I think you can tell those stories with Superman, and it has been told. But also it's like, what? That's the thing you find wrong with Superman 4? Like, you know. I mean, the whole thing's filmed in a Milton Keynes shopping centre. Like, you know. But you can imagine if I think basically Christopher Reeve is the only one who cares for Superman 4, isn't he? And if there'd been more people who cared as much as he did involved with the film, maybe it would have worked.
There's a scene in Superman 4 I'll always remember. It's the one where he's on a date with Lois as Clark, and he also has to talk to her as Superman. So in and out and in and out, and he's still really good in it. So
yeah, because Superman's got a date with Lois, and Clark has got a date with Mariel Hemingway.
Yeah, like I guess that's probably the only logical place left they could go with that dynamic is we gonna put this guy in a double date with 2 women as both Superman and Clark Kent, and we gonna see how this works.
At the same time.
Yeah, at the same time. But man, he was great. Like, because he nailed it yet again. If he would have flubbed that scene would have just, because there's not much left to the scene. It hinges on his performance as Clark Kent, as Superman, and it also hinges on his performance as a guy who's playing a guy who's playing a guy. You know what I mean? So it's like it's kind of crazy how he was able to do that time after time after time, no matter what was going on with these movies and mess, and he always nailed it. Like, there's no wasted space with him as Superman.
Absolutely.
So what, to round it off, what does Superman the movie mean to you personally, Duy?
There was a period of time, I think this was like towards the end of high school to maybe first semester of college, freshman year of college, where all I played was Superman 1 and 2 on loop. And it got my friends in college. I played it so much that they could quote it. A favorite one was Ursa going Superman. That's why I brought it up. It's like we would just go around addressing each other as Superman. But it was that, like, and we knew that it was dated. We knew that the fight scene in 2 was kind of ridiculous because, he flies towards them and then he twists himself 180 degrees, so he's now he's kicking them, and so we knew that it was dated, but it's still, for us, it's still held up. I don't know when the next time it will be when I watch both movies again back to back. As you know, in the last 10 years, there's been an influx of movies that have been inspired by Superman the movie. But the cartoons are really good too. So, but yeah, I mean, for me, I didn't really like superhero movies before 2011 a lot. I felt like a lot of them were embarrassed to be superhero movies. And for me, the two exceptions were always Superman by Christopher Reeve and Adam West's Batman, which might have been embarrassed to be a superhero movie, but I don't care. It was funny.
Yeah.
So
Fantastic. Lamar, what does Superman the movie mean to you personally?
I have a lot of childhood memories as far as like my family being together because of that movie. Because when I was growing up in the early '80s, we didn't have cable in the town I grew up in. Because I grew up in a place like Smallville, but it was certain movies that would come on, and they would only come on once a year, right? And that was King Kong, the 33 and the 76, The Wizard of Oz, Sound of Music, a couple of other like musicals and things like that, and Superman. And they came on once a year on network television, and it was an event. Like everybody came to our house because we had the big living room. So like, and where I grew up at, like I said, we had our own land. So everybody on the land was my family. So everybody would come to our house and we would sit and watch it. And my grandma, a lot of times, she'd get in the kitchen and she would fry chicken or fish or whatever. So we would all have dinner together and we would sit down and watch the movie, or she would make like a cobbler or something like that, and we would have it and watch them, and all of that. And so I have a lot of really good childhood memories because of that film. And also, when I was young, that whole thing about the country mouse and the city mouse dynamic, that was a reality for me, because whenever I went to like large cities and stuff, I always felt out of place. So I saw a lot of myself in that whole transition that he makes. But, Superman is just an aspirational character. And when you have something like that that's done well, I just say if it didn't do its job with anybody else, it did it with me. They're just aspects of that movie that informed who I am as a person and reinforced certain ideals, and a lot of it has to do with Christopher Reeve's performance, so that doesn't mean I think the movie is above critique or anything. It just means that, there's certain memories that I carry around with me, and, it's a lot of it is because of that movie, and it actually brought me closer to my family members in a sense. You know what I mean? So I'll always be grateful to everybody involved in that movie for that.
Fantastic.
and of
Speaking
course, I
personally,
will always have Somewhere in Time to remind me of.
oh well, yes.
Well,
Superman 5.
yeah. I mean, he could have went with Village of the Damned. You know what I mean?
I guess that wasn't the first time I saw Superman traveling through time.
Have you ever seen that film Switching Channels, I think it's called? It's got Burt Reynolds in it.
Yeah, I love that movie, man. That movie is insane.
It's very good. But the joke, I think it's a sort of in-joke in that, is that Christopher Reeve's character is afraid of heights. So if you'd had that presented as Superman 5, that would have been an interesting twist.
Paul?
But yeah, Superman the movie for me, like I said earlier on, it didn't really resonate with me as a child. It's something I came to as I grew older. And now every time I watch it, and I watch it at least once or twice a year, it just makes me happy, just purely happy every time I watch it. And it's, because it's so fun, it's so daft, the performances are so strong. But I think also, that thing of having someone that won't let you down, someone who you can look up to and won't have feet of clay, and just being able to believe in someone who won't get corrupted by absolute power is a really powerful thing. And I know that isn't something that is realistic, and we shouldn't believe that it is realistic, as everyone's flawed in some way. But as an ideal to strive towards, I think that's really powerful.
An ideal and escape.
It's as escapism, as a comfort blanket thing. It's really powerful. And I'm someone as well who carries a lot of guilt around with me for, and you might say for no reason, because, I'm someone who suffers from a lot of intrusive thoughts. I'm someone who gets a lot of anxiety and worrying, and I ruminate on a lot of things I've done in my life and a lot of things I've said. And just to have someone who, I guess it's kind of like sort of quasi-religious, I suppose, just to have someone who sees the best in humanity and sees the best in flawed people, that's enormously comforting as well. I'm always really wary of fans who elevate Superman to this religious level, but I think the reason I'm so wary of fans who do that is because I do it myself, and I'm aware that I do it myself, and I try and rein it back in a little bit. But I can't deny that that aspect of it is there for me as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what that film means to me.
Yeah, you talked in one of our episodes about how there's a faction of fans who kind of look to Superman as the ideal dad figure. And I think that's goes to a lot of what you were talking about.
Mm. Yeah, to me, he's like a sort of comforting older brother, you know, who looks out for you. And that's lovely, that, isn't it? Who doesn't like that?
Well, you want to talk about my older brother who put me in front of someone? No.
There we go.
This was good. Yeah, this was a good show. I liked it.
Yeah. Shall I do a little wrap-up thing?
Hey, good.
That brings us to the end of our look at Superman the movie from me, Lamar, and Duy. Don't forget to click like and subscribe to the Comics Cube channel. Follow us on Twitter at Comics Cube, and share with your friends. Thank you very much.